Hello, everybody. Welcome to Also Rusty Buckets. What a fucking game. Well, I won't say regardless if you're a fan of the team that lost, because you're allowed to be in a not good mood as a result, but I think eventually you would be able to look at this game and just be like, yeah, that was an amazing basketball game, regardless of who you were pulling for in this one. So I just finished watching Game 7 of Nets versus Bucks, obviously, as I'm sure most of you did. However, I'm going to be posting this video probably about an hour after I'm actually recording it, because I have a video up on my main channel that I dropped right after the game that I don't want to hinder that video's performance. So go check that out if you haven't already. It's talking about the future of the Nets. I'm not going to talk about in this video because there is a lot to talk about. This is probably going to be a long one, especially for covering just one game, but I feel the need to do it. I don't even know where to begin. This is one of the best games of the playoffs, if not the best. It's certainly up there. It was a Game 7 overtime, which, according to Marv Albert, which he is senile, so take it with a grain of salt, but according to him, it's the first overtime Game 7 since 2006. So that alone kind of sells you on, yeah, it's probably going to be a damn good fucking game. So out of the gate, this was a game that it really felt like the Nets had this under control, and the Bucks did not look good. But at the same time, it was a close game while that was happening, which in a way kind of spells out just how big injuries have been for the Nets. And I think anyone who's trying to look at this even 5% objectively would be like, yeah, if the Nets were healthy, they win this series. But what happens is what happens, and I'm not going to take shit away too much anyways. But the game started and it looked like the Nets had control. Kevin Durant was feasting as he does. James Harden was getting to the line more consistently than he was in other games that he played, and just doing more stuff a little bit. As the games progressed that he's played, he's been more and more impactful. Still not even close to his usual self right now, but he did some stuff that was good for this team. And I believe at halftime it was like a 5-6 point game. I think it was a 6 point game. I think it was like 47-53. In that first half, a lot of misses from Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday. Not that that didn't continue in the second half. And a lot of Giannis creating at the top of the key. And he ended up not doing that as much in the second half, and I think that was one of the key adjustments. He was doing more post-ups, more action where Jrue and Chris were the ball handler, and they dumped it off to him in different situations where he could attack or just finish immediately. So that switch ended up making things easier for the Bucks. I'm sorry if this commentary is going to end up being very all over the place, because I literally just finished watching that game and it was so goddamn good. Like, it was such a good game. Like my analysis right now is I love basketball. Obviously, I was pulling for the Bucks, and I was pulling pretty strongly. I was basically just a fucking Bucks fan, and I have been for these playoffs, so it was stressful at times. I felt like my heart was pounding out of my chest. And like, while I care about the Bucks winning, it wasn't like the end of the world to me. Like, if it was the Bulls in this situation, which it never will be because they're going to suck for the rest of my life, but if it was, I would have had a heart attack. But I was still very, very much into this one because I wanted the Bucks to win. And I also specifically, no offense to Nets fans, well, a little bit maybe, but I specifically just don't want the Bucks to win because I don't like super teams, and the Nets are, I think I might have said Bucks instead of Nets, but the Nets are a super team. I don't care for them, so rooting against them, especially in the face of my favorite team that remains in the playoffs. It was the Nuggets, and a Warriors with Klay Thompson is my favorite team previous to that, or before the Bucks, but those guys are not around. So after that, this analysis is going to suck. I'm sorry, but I'm literally just so awestruck of what just happened. Second half comes around, and the Bucks start off the third quarter very, very well. They just did more stuff the way that they're supposed to. There were a couple of fast breaks, things like that. Just had a better overall plan of attack and seemed more, what's the word? More uniform, more like a team. Whereas in the first half, they were scoring, but it was all awkward. Their entire offense was like, man, we're lucky we got by with that one. Another thing that I have to make note of is that this team throws so many passes like in the air and in a panic situation. They just have the like the oh fuck, I can't shoot this ball so I have to pass like 15 times a game. Giannis especially when he was attacking off of the perimeter, would do that so much, and he'd be like at a weird angle and just like throw it behind his head. Just very jarring. And there was a lot of that happening in the first half, and just the offense not looking good. Speaking of offense not looking good, Jrue Holiday and Chris Middleton combined for 14 of 49 from the field. 14 of 40 fucking 9, and they still won this game. Now, why did they win this game outside of that? Well, Giannis was great, and he absolutely deserves the credit for this because Giannis has been known to fold in moments like this, and that's fair to give him criticism for that. Now, I've also mentioned multiple times that there's a lot of circumstances that result in that aren't entirely his fault, like the way that he is utilized within the offense, but Giannis absolutely did not fucking fold in this one. 40 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists on 62% from the field, and okay. Overall, he was still not good from the line. But he had a stretch where he hit multiple free throws in a row. But then he also airballed 2 of them. So I guess it was more selective thinking of like crediting him for actually hitting free throws. So actually, no, he just had a not great free throw game again. Although I guess 57% on 14 attempts is probably higher than what he has been doing previous. So I guess like 5% credit for that. Pat Connaughton off of the bench did some stuff. And actually, holy shit. I didn't realize it was this big of a difference. But literally, this was essentially a 6-man rotation from the Bucks because Bryn Forbes played 5 minutes and Thanasis played 51 seconds. And then after that, Pat Connaughton played 23 minutes, and it's all starters from there. Middleton played 52 minutes. Giannis played 50. PJ would have played 50 as well if he didn't get in foul trouble, which we'll talk about in a second. And Brook Lopez. I've been critical of Brook Lopez, and I think rightfully so, especially for his drop coverage. But in Game 6 and in this game, he's done a much better job of not being such a liability with the drop. And a couple of blocks in this game that were rather large. He finishes with 4. There were like 2 different blocks. One of them was on Kevin Durant. It might have been, the other one might have been on Kevin Durant, the one I'm thinking of. But they were just so pivotal, those blocks, and bringing the defense that he did, bringing the help defense. It was just a great effort by him. Offensively, 3 for 4 from the field, 7 for 11 from, or 3 for 4 from 3, 7-11 overall. Just a good game for Brook Lopez, and as critical as I have been of him, I think it's fair to give him the praise where it is due. So, praise to Brook Lopez. On the Nets side of things, Kevin Durant, once again, unbelievable. The shot that he hit to send it into overtime was an all-time great playoff shot that is unfortunately just not going to be remembered as such as much as it could be because they lost the game. Like, an example of that I can think of is Tim Duncan's shot that he hit against the Lakers, where after that, Derek Fisher hit a shot that probably should not have counted, but that's a whole nother conversation. He hit that shot against the Spurs with 0.4 seconds left, and that ended up being the shot that you remember. But the shot that Tim Duncan hit right before that was probably that's the most difficult game-winning shot that he'd hit of his career by far. Or it would have been if Derek Fisher didn't do that. And I feel like that shot that he hit at the end of the fourth quarter to tie it up with 1 second left on the clock, that play, that shot was so absurd, and it's not going to be remembered as much as the years go on. But he finishes this game with 48 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists on pretty damn good efficiency. Got to the line a good amount. James Harden with a near triple-double. He didn't shoot well from the field at all, and maybe shot a little bit too much, and maybe should have been 5% more reserved. And actually looking at this rotation once more, on the net side of things, they really just didn't fuck around at all with the depth. Nick Claxton played 1 second on the inbound play at the end of the fourth quarter, and then Landry Shamet played 7 minutes. Jeff Green played 13, even though I think Jeff Green's better than Blake Griffin, so he should be getting Blake's minutes. It doesn't matter because Blake also had a great game, so Blake had a good game, so there's credit to him for that. James Harden shot inefficient. Bruce Brown was good at what Bruce Brown does. Joe Harris, big point of slander here is going towards Joe Harris because he missed some big shots in overtime. I think he missed a really big shot at the end of the fourth quarter or towards the last 2 minutes. 3 for 9 from 3 overall. Just not the best from Joe Harris. And when it was very clear that James Harden wasn't going to be James Harden and Kyrie Irving was going to be out, a lot of people looked Joe Harris's direction, and Excuse me. And we're like, okay, that's going to be the guy that has to step up. Joe Harris could average 20 points per game on the right team. He absolutely could. He's a good enough shooter and good enough at attacking off of the dribble when he needs to, off of closeouts and things like that, to where just in a decent system where he's more of a focal point, Joe Harris can average 20 a game. He's a scorer like that. And then he does this, and he hasn't been good in the last 2 games as well, and really the series as a whole. So, yeah, not a good game from Joe Harris, and that was a big determining factor in this one. So yeah, that was huge from the Bucks side of things. Is that once again this was pretty much a situation of Kevin Durant is doing really well as he's one to do. However, the everything else isn't as great as you would like it to be. Now, credit to Blake Griffin because he played really well, hit 3 3-pointers. All of those threes felt huge. And James Harden did well distributing and got to the line to the point where I imagine his efficiency wasn't atrocious, like true shooting-wise, but definitely not the best from him either. But no criticism in his direction because he's been playing on a hurt Achilles. Like, I don't understand why people are giving James Harden shit for this performance because it's not his fault. The only thing I would say is just maybe he shouldn't shoot the ball as much as he did. He did bank in 1 3 that was ridiculous at the end of the shot clock, like in the late 4th quarter. I think like 2 minutes left. But regardless, even if he should have shot the ball a little bit less, I'm not too mad at James Harden, and I don't think anyone else should be, especially with the context of the injury. Especially if it's an injury that severe and he managed to play, I'm not going to be giving him crap for that. So that's kind of the synopsis of what actually happened with Bucks Nets in terms of the play. Talking about the overall play, talking about specific stuff, first I have to mention, look, I hope people understand that I'm being completely transparent and truthful here when I say this. I don't complain about officiating much. Very rarely, especially if you've kept track of my post-game recaps on here, even talking about my own team, the Bulls, I very rarely complain about officiating. And when I do, it's usually for both sides of it. Usually I'm like, okay, this was shit officiating, but it was shit officiating for both sides, so it kind of evens out. When I tell you this game was officiated terribly, heavily against the Bucks, that's not coming just because I like the Bucks, because I just don't do this. I don't talk shit about the officiating very often. I might point out a dumb call that everyone's talking about, and yeah, it's a dumb call, but overall, I tend to expect some bad calls. However, this game was terribly officiated, like painfully, oh my god, the fucking terrible fouls in this game. The thing that stands out the most to me, and I love Bruce Brown, but the dude set so many illegal screens that were not called. And it really just for the series in total, there were 2 different fouls with PJ Tucker that were illegal screens. Just straight up illegal screens by Bruce Brown, and clear as day illegal screens, by the way. And those were called as fouls on PJ Tucker. PJ Tucker ended up fouling out because on another possession, PJ Tucker was held by Blake Griffin, and that was called on PJ. Now, PJ did swipe at Blake's arms because he was like, get the fuck off of me, which he shouldn't have done. Absolutely not. But if we're calling a foul out of that situation, it's on the guy who is holding another player when you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that in football, let alone fucking basketball. So a lot of PJ Tucker bullshit here. That's the reason why he fouled out. Absolutely, he should have had 3 fouls in this game. And even then, I'm not even entirely sure. There's other stuff that I know happened, and I'm struggling to think of it right now. On the one thing on the net side that I can say is that there was a blocking foul on Giannis that I thought was pretty questionable. Yeah, I just know there were a lot of fouls in this one that were stupid to me, and now that I'm actually trying to think of them on the spot, they're not coming to me, but those PJ ones in particular really stood out. It was just painful. And a lot of people were complaining that this was rigged because, you know, big market, big superstars versus just Giannis in a small market. 1 second. Excuse me. I understand that. I wouldn't go as far as to say it was rigged. It was just really badly officiated, and it bit the Bucks multiple times over. And honestly, I would have been a lot more pissed about all this, and I probably would have remembered the specific fouls a lot more had they lost. If they had lost this game, that would have been a big reason. Now, another big reason they could have lost this game is, shocker, Mike Budenholzer. What a surprise. Mike Budenholzer did some stupid shit in this game. Now, I will credit him for just not bullshitting with the rotation and playing Giannis 50 minutes. I'll give him credit for that. And I'll even give him credit for making an adjustment in the second half where, once again, Giannis is not taking it off of the dribble at the top of the perimeter. Even though he already made that adjustment and saw it worked and then still started the fucking start of this game with the same shit. Another thing he didn't do was put Giannis on Kevin Durant. Look, it doesn't matter now. The series is over. The Bucks won. But it's still going to bother me for so fucking long that this dude didn't put Giannis on Kevin Durant. It was the most obvious thing. And I very rarely, not even rarely, I will never claim to know better than a coach at any point pretty much ever. But right now, I knew better than Mike Budenholzer for this matchup, as did pretty much everybody, which was a huge amount of people saying that they should put Giannis on Kevin Durant. Because Kevin Durant is the only fucking guy on the team that has the length and the speed to actually contest Kevin Durant in whatever the fuck Kevin Durant is doing. The pull-up jump shots. Look, PJ Tucker played great physical defense and interrupted the rhythm of what Kevin Durant wanted to do. But he's still 6'4", 6'5", with not the longest arms in the world. At the end of the fucking day, PJ Tucker can't guard Kevin Durant. Not to the extent that Giannis can, that's for damn sure. Let alone fucking Jrue Holiday and Chris Middleton. So many possessions in this game where Jrue Holiday and Chris Middleton were defending Kevin Durant, especially Jrue, and Durant just went right at them in the post and scored every fucking time. And they didn't switch from it. It was maddening. And I understand, it doesn't matter now. But it really mattered in the moment. It really mattered 10 minutes ago when I was watching it. Because holy shit, even on the last possession, it's fucking PJ Tucker on him. And I believe it was Jrue Holiday with the shot that Kevin Durant airballed at the end of overtime, by the way. Didn't even mention that. Yeah, it was just perplexing. But then there's one play in particular that nearly ended the Bucks season. And believe me, I am not being facetious. I'm not being over dramatic. I am not like saying this shit just to be over the top and overemphasize it. There was a play that could have very easily ended the Bucks season if they did not execute properly in overtime, which they honestly didn't, but the Nets also didn't, so it kind of worked out. There was a play where it went out of bounds. The Bucks were up 2, and I think their chance to tie it up, that it got like tipped out of bounds. 2 seconds on the clock. Timeout. Plenty of time to discuss your inbound plan. And they inbound it to Brook Lopez in the corner, where he immediately gets trapped. Now, here's the thing. A Brook Lopez inbound is fine if you're in a position where you can set up a play, but there's 2 seconds on the clock. Is Brook Lopez going to take a fadeaway 3 out of the corner? Come on now. Now, he could have taken it, and if he had just simply airballed that shit, literally it would have taken seconds off of the clock, and that would have been a difference maker, and Kevin Durant probably wouldn't have even got the shot up that he did. Butterfly effect and all that, maybe someone hits a 3 instead and the game ends up going to the Nets. But, you know, regardless, clearly the wrong situation, because Brook Lopez pump fakes and then tries to pass it out to Jrue Holiday. Brook Lopez also had terrible fucking court awareness. Like, there's 2 seconds on the clock, bro. You can't pass. He should have known that. But also, there should have been an inbound play that didn't get the ball to fucking Brook Lopez. So, very nearly a play that would have ended the Bucks season. And I don't mean, like, Brook should have shot that and he would have made it. First of all, it shouldn't have been to him. It should have been to a player capable of making a fadeaway corner shot like Chris Middleton, for example. But it wasn't just that. It's just like literally if Brook just missed the shot, if he just put up the shot and missed it, it would have taken like 2 seconds off the clock, and it would have changed the result for sure. Regardless, though, in spite of the fact that Jrue Holiday and Chris Middleton played terrible overall, they hit some clutch shots. Jrue especially heated up in the fourth quarter in overtime. Chris Middleton hit a big shot in overtime that made it a 4-point game, and that's where it really felt like the Bucks were going to win this one. They still played terribly, so you have to point that out. But with that, Mike Budenholzer making dumb decisions. The officiating, just straight up, I don't care if you call me biased because I almost said because I'm a Bucks fan. Was that a Freudian slip? Because I care about the Bucks and I want them to win more so than the Nets. You can call it biased all you want, but the officiating was not in the Bucks' favor in this one. So you add them playing terribly, Mike Budenholzer being Mike Budenholzer, and poor officiating, strongly against your team, and Giannis drops 40 points. There's a lot of Giannis slander out there, and he deserves a decent amount of it. However, give Giannis the praise that he deserves for this game, because he was absolutely fucking dominant, and he is the reason why the Bucks are going to the conference finals right now, and he deserves all the credit in the world for that, and I really hope he gets that credit, because he straight up matched Kevin Durant in this game, and that's insane because Kevin Durant played ridiculously well. And I'm just very happy because Giannis is one of my favorite players in the league. So I've had to be in the position of defending him multiple times, and like I said, you know, I'm blaming other people on any. If this game was over, I would have blamed it entirely on everything except for Giannis, and that's because it wasn't Giannis's fault. But Giannis deserves credit for this, is my point. I've been in the position of defending him for a long time, and there's still a lot of issues with the Bucks roster. I still wish they'd run small and things like that, but at the end of the day, Giannis did what he was supposed to do as the superstar player, when we have seen multiple times where he hasn't done that, and he's deserved criticism for that, but he also deserves praise for finally getting around and doing it. So shout out to him for that. I'm trying to think. I don't want to leave any stone unturned here because this game was so fucking good, and there's so much to talk about coming out of it. But I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave any stone unturned. So I'm just like scrolling through the box score, making sure I'm not forgetting anything. But I really can't. So I think that's it. I believe so. I'm going to try and FaceTime Nicholas to see if he can, because he's a Bucks fan. I want to see if he could give us a take real quick. If he doesn't reply, then that's just the end of the video. It's not going to happen. He's not going to pick up. Damn. I tried. Come on, buddy. Could have had a moment to shine, but I guess not. Speaking of Nicholas, our video talking about Game 4 that we went to. We went to Bucks Nets Game 4. Us talking about that game is over on... It's the most recent video on this channel, so go check that out if you have not already. That was a fun talk. Post-game recap with another person. So yeah. But that's the video. That was amazing. I'm so happy right now as a basketball fan and as someone whose favorite team in the playoffs right now at this point is the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll probably have a video discussing what the rest of the playoffs look like after this series. So, yeah. But that's it. Goodbye.